Let's move to this. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana has warned that if a national coalition is formed after next year's elections, it will be problematic for economic policy formulation and will likely undermine the efficacy of any budget process. However, the minister says he is confident that South Africans will ultimately vote for stability, namely the ANC. SABC News has spoken to Godongwana about a number of issues, including fixing public finances, the NHI Bill, the new date for the two-port retirement system, and rumours around his health. A Business News reporter Nompumelelo Siziba asked the minister whether National Treasury was on track to achieving its fiscal consolidation goals.
Let's start on the whole fiscal situation. Now, in the midterm budget that you tabled at the beginning of November, you did tell us that you were hoping that we were going to get to a sort of fiscal consolidation stabilization level by 2025, 2026 at 77, with a debt to GDP ratio of 77% of GDP. But the problem is that a lot of analysts and even the likes of the IMF are placing that figure a lot higher. How confident are you about our fiscal consolidation story?
Let me just say our problem, first and foremost, is a growth story. If you look at all other economies, for instance, Japan's debt to GDP ratio is about 200. No one questions that because the problem, the economy is that it's got the capacity to service that debt. Our story is a growth one, in the sense that while our interest costs are going up, and the performance of the economy is going in the other direction, and therefore make it a challenge to deal with that fiscal situation. But what we have done, as I'm saying, is that we were trying to do a fiscal consolidation strategy which will make sure that by 25-26 we stabilize, and then thereafter that debt to GDP ratio is going to go down.
But like you say, the issue of growth continues to elude us. Do you think enough is being done at a structural reform level to help catalyze the growth that we need? Because remember, we also know that even before we had a real crisis in terms of energy and even the logistics situation, the South African economy was still not growing even before those issues became more prominent.
I mean, I normally use 4 issues which we need to tackle, which now we see we're mobilizing everybody and business behind those issues. The first one is the electricity issue. You'll see that since 2008 to date, we've been having a stagnant growth. I would argue that there's a correlation between that growth and the performance of the electricity sector. Now we've been joined by the logistics sector, where there's also crime. I must add the state capacity. As we sit, we publish every quarter what is called a Section 32 report, which shows how governments are performing. Already we're seeing a 9 billion rand in the half of the year. We're seeing a 9 billion rand overspending. I don't know how we're going to sustain that moving forward. So your issues, those are the 4 issues in my view that need to be tackled.
And then what about at the municipal level? We know that municipalities are just not doing a good job. In some instances, they're not spending their allocations at all that they need to for infrastructural development and all the rest of it. And this impacts on business confidence and people not wanting to invest in certain areas, job growth, etc.
It talks to the 4th point I raised of capacity issues at that level. And I'm saying capacity at all levels, even at municipalities. Again, even at municipalities, we publish every quarter Section 71 reports, which shows the performance of those municipalities. I would imagine a critical aspect of that is how do we make sure that we can help develop this capacity at all levels.
It does seem quite ironic, Minister, because you talked about partnering with the private sector in order to get things going, to deal with some of the bottlenecks in the economy. But then now you have the NHI, which seems to almost seek to disenfranchise the private sector. We know that the NHI Bill is now in the President's in-tray for signature to pass into law, but many prominent business people, including the likes of Adrian Gore, who's the head of Discovery, has said that the NHI, as things stand, is not going to work without the participation of the private sector. Is this not a concern for you? Because ultimately, you can't have the public sector footing the bill of something that's going to be as costly as the NHI.
let me just say there's some dishonest in debating this issue. As things stand, as subsidize the rich and the middle class 34 billion rand per annum through their medical aid. Now, when you say the same facilities must be extended for the poor, people saying it's not affordable. My sense is that what we need to do is to have a rational debate about this thing. And I suggest, though, I suspect even the people like Adrian Go are not saying don't have NHI. They have got special problems about one particular way of implementing it. I think the general agreement, NHI has got to be implemented. And therefore, we cannot afford to subsidize the rich and the middle class, but we can't subsidize the poor.
Doesn't it make sense to fine-tune the inadequacies of the system before it's passed into law? Because once it's passed into law, it becomes more problematic.
Let me just say, once it's passed into law, it doesn't mean you'll have NHI on that day. What it does mean, you've got a framework within which you can implement it over a time period which government will have to craft.
Why give Transnet a guarantee as opposed to a capital injection? I mean, you've been more than generous to Eskom, and surely Transnet is equally important as Eskom. Why?
I hope we are not a shop steward of Transnet.
Not at all.
Let me just say, even Eskom, it has taken a while to arrive at that decision. As things stand, we are looking into the numbers, how Transnet is going to perform in terms of their numbers. We're engaging them with that. What we've done is to say between now and March, to give them a breathing space, we need to give them this guarantee while we are looking at the broader financial numbers of Transnet.